Truth in Its Art. I am your host, Rob Lee. Thanks for listening. And today we're recording in Washington, D.C. at Eaton, D.C. in the Eaton Radio Hub. Eaton Radio is a community-based radio station with a DIY spirit, and that definitely resonates with the podcaster in me. And today, I'm super excited to be in conversation with my next guest, the Director of Media for United Fray and the Editor-in-Chief of District Fray Magazine. Please welcome Monica Alford. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for making the time and coming down. I see that you're dressed for the occasion. I'm in a dusty Carhartt, so...
I think you look very stylish.
Well, thank you. I'm wearing my DC brand.
That's right.
So, for starters, could you share a little bit of your background and some of your early creative interests?
Sure. So, I'm one of those strange people that has always wanted to be a journalist. And I feel like even from early childhood, being a writer and being very, very interested in arts and culture that's been everything. That's been all my hobbies and interests. And then in middle school, high school, leading up to college, any opportunity to write, running the school newspaper, writing for the neighborhood newsletter, doing great internships with the first International Spy Museum, actually, nice. For their marketing department right when they first opened, which was very fun. And then working for this great local newspaper that was a student-led newspaper, but run by several OG journalists that are part of the National Press Club. And some of those friends made in high school are now creatives that have stayed in DC that I've been friends with for 15. I'm not going to say how long, but yeah, it's been a while, 20 years actually, yeah, closer to 20 years. And then I really started being, there was that time, especially I grew up in the DC area, so I didn't want to do politics, didn't want to do hard news, so it was kind of figuring out, okay, so magazine, feature writing, how to start that career. And I ended up going to Emerson College, which is, one of the best journalism schools in the country. It was my dream. I actually was accepted for January admission and went to another school for a few months, and I was supposed to go to Loyola New Orleans, and I got down there for 3 days and had to evacuate because it was Katrina. So that's how I started my collegiate career, which was a very interesting way to start. And the long and short of that was that Georgetown offered to keep a lot of Loyola students because it was Jesuit and they honored our tuition and we had scholarships, et cetera. So I was at Georgetown for a semester, which was very, very interesting with a lot of other displaced students, and I had the opportunity to apply to stay there, which was not ever the plan, go back to Loyola, which was very tempting because I love New Orleans, and another big part of my background and personal passions, which I credit my mom for 100%, is philanthropy and giving back and nonprofit work, and that idea of being there to help rebuild a city that is so deeply rooted in arts and culture was very tempting. But I ended up going to Emerson as planned because that was, again, I'm on that one-track mind. And I double majored in print journalism and magazine writing and publishing, so it was exactly what I wanted to do. And then I spent the first 6 or 7 years out of school paying my dues, doing the opposite of what I think a lot of millennials did. I went right into working for a company where I built out weekend events calendars and online newsletters. They were circulated via email with a couple 100,000 people in the area, but it was on behalf of realtors. Yeah. So I was basically writing their content for them. But it was, similar to some of the things that we do now digitally for the magazine, all the cool things to do, in and around the city, and then starting to incorporate interviews with artists and chefs and things like that. And I freelanced on the side always for different publications in and around DC. And then I was a strategic consultant for a couple of years. Yeah. So I worked with a lot of clients like the National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence and NIST out in Maryland. And I always tease that, because my husband's in public health and I say he's my dorky scientist. And I always say that my job was to come in and build the comms plans and work with the dorky scientists and teach them how to be more well-spoken and better presenting. But it was great work, and still a ton of professional writing. But that was not where my heart was. And and still freelancing all the time. And one of the magazines I was freelancing the most for was On-Tap magazine, which I became managing editor of full-time at the beginning of, it was 2016. And On-Tap was based in Alexandria, Virginia. It had been around since 1998. Our circulation was really steep. It was 250 locations monthly, and then we had all glossy covers and newsprint interior, and it started as more of like, pick up a copy at your neighborhood bar, and it was definitely more food and bev focused. Some arts and culture content. And then when I started writing for On-Tap, I was very interested in the local theater scene. And again, growing up here and seeing the way the city has changed, it was always very important to me to make the performing arts in particular more accessible to younger people, and to kind of remove that idea that it's for stuffy, white hairs, and that it's expensive and not accessible to different audiences. And so I became the theater columnist, and then I just literally wrote anything, anytime that the magazine needed or wanted, which is how I think I got the gig. And I give that advice to people all the time. I'm like, pay your dues, write your butt off, or do whatever, interview your butt off or photograph your butt off, whatever it is, because the hustle and being willing to not turn down any assignment and be a team player and a generalist is really huge.
And I think that's a really good note right there, where in looking at doing this.
Yeah.
When I tell people, it's like, I put out 300 podcasts last year. They look at me like I'm out of my mind. And I was like, I'm doing it, and part of it comes from this conversation I had with a casting director.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're around, you're going to get picked up for work. People are going to oh yeah, I saw that interview. I know that person. I want to be interviewed. And this interview is probably going to be a part of this week of interviews. So you might find this interesting. I love New Orleans as well, right? Yeah. I was able to interview the creative director for Way Magazine. Nice. So it's just kind of running this little theme right here. And I was down there 2 weeks ago. So this is the second time this year I've been in New Orleans.
Yeah.
I love New Orleans.
I do too. The only reason I got lucky enough to evacuate is because I had been down a few times with my parents. They had dear friends who ran an Airbnb B&B down there, and they were staying with them. So most kids got, stuck going and living in really awful conditions for at least a week without being able to reach their families. And I got lucky enough that my folks were still in town, packed an overnight bag when it was Category 1, and took the longest bridge in the country over to to Florida. Right. Tried to cross through Mississippi and had a cop say the state of Mississippi is closed. And we're like, what? I'm like, find another way. So it was wild. But yeah, I've always felt a strong bond with that city. I have so many friends who live down there now too. So
100%. It's right there, sitting there as a potential relocation space or what have you. Already have a New Orleans Creole Cajun alias. Nice. It's not good.
I love that.
So, could you tell us a bit about your current role? Yeah.
Yes, of course. Yeah, sorry. And I can move more quickly through this last part. So essentially, I became managing editor of On-Tap after being a freelancer and a theater columnist at the beginning of 2016, and I was in that role for 3 years before we were acquired by District Fray. And in the On-Tap years, I basically in those 3 years gutted the magazine completely. I was like, this is what I've been wanting to do my whole life. I'm so excited, and I wanted to really reshape. The bones were good, and our publisher was a total hustler. She set up our company in a way where she ran great events all over the city too to help generate revenue and expand our partnerships, and everything from National Geographic Museum to the Wharf. And so I learned a lot from her in that time, but I also was pretty unabashed about coming in and saying I'm gutting it. I got rid of writers and contributors that I didn't think were the right fit. I became a art director, essentially. I've never not been 100% involved in the design process, and I don't have any formal background in that. So in those years, it was a lot of extra work and a lot for me to learn, but really wanted the magazine to not only be more comprehensively lifestyle and entertainment and bring in more arts and culture, but have really good professional journalists supporting as a professional editor, making sure everything was the way it needed to look, high quality design and photography, and also just telling the right stories. And so I put everything into that. And then at the beginning of 2019, our former publisher ended up taking a full-time role with The Wharf, running their private events, and very quickly sold. And that was a tough time because I had a moment, a window where I could have purchased the magazine or tried to find a way to get a board of investors and
Right.
do it on my own. But it was just such a quick turn, and I didn't feel like that was a smart move without a couple of years of planning, or at least a year, some kind of sounding board and time. So Fray's been incredible, though. It ended up being, it opened so many more opportunities for us. So I went from managing editor to editor-in-chief, and now I'm editor-chief and director of media. So we kept the On Tap name for a full year, and then we rebranded as District Fray March 2020. We were supposed to do a winter issue, and I delayed it because I wanted everything to be perfect. I had No Kings Collective, Brandon Hill illustrated front and back cover. I was doing, spots on air, which I'm not comfortable doing. I don't like being on TV. We were being interviewed by other publications. I was on panels. We were supposed to have a 1,000-person launch party. I mean, we did it up, and literally came out that first week of March, and then 2 weeks later. So it was a really wild time to come out with a new publication as well. But in that time, we were able to go all glossy and perfect bound, so really just like a beautiful publication, and again continue to evolve the format and the quality of content. And we were the one thing keeping the company engaged with the community during COVID. So the Fray's 12 years old, and it started with social sports leagues, and now we have events all over the city that range from concert series to one-off cultural events. And then I'm at the helm a lot of the magazine specific ones that are editorially curated, and then daily digital content and the print publication 11 times a year. But during that time, events and sports couldn't really do much, right? They did a lot of virtual things, but we still kept making the magazine, and that whole idea of storytelling and community building and staying engaged in the community. And we did everything safely, but I never stopped working with my team. I still saw them every month for production. We had a bubble. Again, my husband's in public health, so my team always called him Mr. CDC. Like, he does not work for the CDC, but basically he was our litmus for what we thought was safe and what we could do. And so it was pretty incredible to be able to keep making the magazine. And Fray, because it's just a bigger entity, has afforded us the opportunity to really grow the publication and make a name for ourselves in a so we're still small and scrappy, but not quite as small and scrappy as the On Tap days. So yeah, that's.
Thank you. Wow. I mean, that's like half of the questions that I have. So shout out to you. It's as if you had the questions already.
Well, they're all so connected, and it's like I feel like if I can give you anything, it's the through line for me is anytime I'm making like a big leap or starting a new chapter, something crazy happens, right? New publication and it's COVID, or starting college and it's Katrina, or at the same month that I got the job at On Tap, we'd been trying to get pregnant, and I told my husband, "This is it, dream job. We'll pause." I was pregnant with my son a month later, so we were that whole first year at a company or a magazine that literally has a beer title, where I was out and about doing behind the bar columns, whatever. I was pregnant the whole time, and just proving that I was gonna kick it with everybody else, my young staff. And so yeah, it's just I don't do things the easy way, I guess.
I'm hearing that, and I admire that as well.
Thank you.
So I see this idea, this mission maybe, of making fun possible.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that, and in that vein, what is your favorite part of your job?
Okay, so Make Fun Possible is the ethos that our CEO and publisher, Robert Kinsler, built for the company. So it is the through line for all three, the pillars of our company, media, event, sports. And we touch about 100,000 people in the city across those three areas. And his vision when he wanted to acquire a media entity or build one of his own was to make sure that we cover things that bring people joy. And so the way that I translate his mission statement for the company, because we there's a joke in the publishing world, like no publisher and editor are always on the same page, and it's healthy for us to butt heads, and we talk about that frequently. But at the end of the day, we we share a love for print, and he is young as well, like a much younger publisher than most of his peers in that space, and is very committed to keeping this publication. So to his credit, we always find our way through, even when we disagree. And when it comes to the Making Fun Possible, the way that translates for me to the content specifically is this idea of community building. I constantly want to provide voices, provide a space for voices that haven't been heard yet. So a lot of the feedback I get from community members is, wow, I didn't know that these people existed, or they weren't on my radar, and every time I look at your content, I'm learning about new people in the community that are up and coming in whatever their field or area of interest is, and a lot of our peers seem to only continue working with or featuring the same people, and there's space for the OGs, and then there's so many young people and people in general doing incredible things in the city. So I want to be like a discovery tool for that, where folks come to us knowing they're gonna learn about someone interesting that they didn't know about. And all of our journalism is objective. We don't this isn't advertorial, but we're also not hard news public. We're not hard news. We're not. I don't have critics.
Right.
We're not snarky. That's not a space that I would want, even if that wasn't already our publisher's mission. So he and I are very aligned on that, and we also don't get political. So I think it is generally, we talk about things that are real, and there's a lot of things that are not happy, but our angle is always, okay, but here's how you can support this effort, or connect with this person, or why their story is so empowering, or whatever else. So that's what I hope to translate through our content. And the only other example I can give that's, I think sometimes with our digital content, we'll do what everybody else does. It's a roundup of best places to treat your mom for Mother's Day brunch. Everybody wants to know that, and we have a lot of people places that we want to support. And I'm a mom; I might want to look at that list. But then also, we're not Eater, right? You're not going to go to us to find out the 5 new brunch spots that opened this month, but in our next print issue, or in our digital content the next few weeks, you might see a piece or two about the chef at that new spot and what makes them so interesting, and they'll give tips for, or share a recipe, or give some kind of interesting insight into their kitchen, or how they prepare a dish, or how they support immigrant workers because of their own experience, and why they're the kind of restaurant you want to align yourself with because they do great work for the community. So that's more, I would say, we're a little bit of a deeper dive on those types of stories, which I think is really special because there's so many of those to tell.
Yeah, I like the. And thank you for that, because I like the sort of notion of, we're just kind of providing it. We're kind of putting you on, as it were.
Yep.
And that's what I aim to do in this. There's an occasion I get these DMs from folks, man, I really wish you would have asked that gotcha question. It's I don't want to ask that.
Yeah.
That's you know what that does?
Yep.
It kind of you don't get to the next interview. You don't get to the next person. It's maybe there is a tougher question. Maybe there is something that's a little deeper that can provide some insight. But the purpose of it is kind of showing this person, showing their work, showing and helping them share their story.
Yep.
And that's kind of the focus.
Yep.
Everything else, I don't really care about that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the point too, is I think it's what motivates you, right? I know there are journalists and interviewers that want to have that gotcha moment because that feels important to them, to be they got the scoop, or they did the thing. But the upshot for me is, or takeaway is, I want to build this with kindness only, and if there's ever something that doesn't work out with anyone we've partnered with, or for on an event or featured on a cover, you always kill with kindness. You never ever burn a bridge. Our city is so small. Baltimore too, and the way those communities know each other so well. Our creative communities are tiny, and everybody knows everybody, and it's just why what's the point of doing that? Why wouldn't you want to be a cheerleader and a supporter of the people that you're choosing to feature, rather than putting them in that tough position?
Yeah, I remember I did this interview with Sunny from DC Jazz Fest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she was sitting there, and she was like, I'm a jazz champion. I was like, I like that. And I started thinking about it. I was like, I like talking with people who are evangelists, who are activists, who are in that sort of vein, but for the creative sort of like conversation and documenting it in that way.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't need to do that. That's for someone else. And, as a person I'm trying to like have more of the journalistic slant to what I do.
Yep.
I was just like, I just do podcasts. And I was just like, no, I'm a journalist, I'm an arts journalist. And I'll say, like, I remember at a point when so many people were like, this is the formula. Do your barbershop podcast, get kind of ratchet with it. And I was like, it's not really what I want to do. I was like, I'm capable of doing that. I'm sure it'd be great. I'm sure I can do the sort of gotcha journalism thing that some people enjoy, but that doesn't bring someone to a place, and that's the purpose of why I'm doing this.
Right.
And even expanding and going out, like going down here and doing these interviews, and I think it's important to do them on location, like in DC, or even when I go up to Philly to do them there, because it's like piquing curiosity. And if I'm going there with the level of curiosity, I hope that resonates in the conversation, where someone's like, I want to learn more about Monica, I want to learn more about Fray.
Right.
And that's the point.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm, again, very appreciative that you thought I was worth having this conversation with. I appreciate it.
This is a long time coming.
I know.
So I got two last real questions for you, right? And I'm going to combine one of them because I think it's going to be interesting. So it's two. Here it is. So let's see. What are some of the considerations that you're making rather, to like fight for that real estate, that sort of attention real estate? Because you see social media, you see like podcasts, you see like publications, websites, all of that stuff. It's like a million things coming at you at one time.
Sure.
And like, how do I stick out? Like, and I think I have an answer for it, but I want to hear from you. So,
meaning, what do I do to make our content in general stick out compared to peers and things?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I think we got really lucky in a sense, and I do not ever wish misfortune on my peers, but BYT shutting down at the beginning of COVID, and City Paper changing their structure, and several other entities just changing or shifting or paring down what they're doing, left an opening that, again, I really rely on the feedback I get out and about in the community. I'm not saying that's the only consideration. I certainly care what, Sunny from DC Jazz Festival or the press director at Kennedy Center, or the people who own 930 Club. I care what they think of the magazine too. But the community is the heartbeat. If they're not reading it, if it's not resonating with them, then what am I doing? Right. So one thing that continues to be said, especially coming out of COVID and everybody being so hungry for connection and finding ways to activate together, collaborate, et cetera, is that the community feels a hole in the market for the kind of content that we're putting out, and also for the kind of events that I'm trying to craft on the editorial side. So I think it's a combination of we're not one of the local or regional glossies that is. There's a lot that are more focused on advertorial and sponsored content and just a different demographic, just like an older version of DC. What I think people who don't spend time here or really know us think about. That's what they think DC is. And then we all know that's not actually the case. Yeah. And there's a space for those publications, and I think they're beautiful and they are well respected, but that's not what we're doing. And I think everybody can see how different we are. But then on the flip, we're also not City Paper or DCist, again, not hard news, not political, not we don't have necessarily critics or like authoritative voices on certain topics in a way that is, you want to make sure you read their review before going to see a play or whatever it might be. But again, that we need those publications too. So I almost describe us as like we're like a hybrid, like an alt monthly that's got like the look and feel and quality, both in the art, the photography, the journalist that I'm working with, the design of these other upper echelon, local pubs. But then our content is more of this like authentic, real DC that resonates more with these publications on the other end that are more interested in, in what we're growing and building here and the way that we're connected. And definitely like a Gen Z millennial focus. So it's a really sweet spot to be in the sense that I feel like really like the energy is vibrating all the time around this, and all I wish I could do is get more eyeballs on us more quickly. And it's been really interesting. I've always wondered what this trajectory would have been like if COVID hadn't happened, or if we'd rebranded like right away the year before or something. Because I think it's the way that it needed to go. But I want to see the people who know us, I think, are very loyal to us and really love the content and really love our events and really are the vibe is clear. Like what we're trying to build is clear and it resonates, it hits. But now my biggest focus is how do I get more people in the city to know about this across the board, whether it's coming to one of our events or checking out just our digital content or picking up the magazine or listening to, your podcast, whatever the case may be. But that's really where I think the focus needs to be now.
So no artificial vibes. I was trying to get that over all day. That's a new term I coined. I was like,
I like that. Yeah, just really like everything needs to ring true. It needs to be authentic. It needs to be genuine. We still, like I said, I care about what our folks that I've built partnerships and relationships with who've given me access for amazing cover shoots or press opportunities. Like those relationships matter a ton to me. But I think I found pretty good alignment consistently between what they want to see and what I want to do and how that hits with the community, because also a lot of the institutions in the city want to bring in the kind of folks that are coming to our events and reading our content, like this hip, young, creative energy is really sexy to all of these institutions. They that's what they want. That's the demo that they're looking for. I think it's an exciting time to kind of, weave those together.
100%.
If that makes sense.
And I think that's actually where we'll start with the real podcast. But even the great Monica Alford has to get the rapid fire questions. So
fair.
I got 3 of them for you.
Okay.
The first one. So this relates to your job, and I'm kind of thinking of like apps. What are like 3 of the most common tools that you use day to day? Like, I remember I had a conversation with Robert Wachowski from Wayette, and he was like, I don't use Canva. He's like, I'm using InDesign. So what are the 3 tools for you?
Well, InDesign is everything that we do, for magazine production and layout. And Otter is what I use for interviews and transcriptions. That is one of my favorite life hacks. And I will do this specifically for my publisher. It'll make his heart go pitter-patter. Our company is really big on Asana as a project management tool. And I've been very resistant to using it for the way we have to track our production process. But I have a creative director and several project managers who have taken the system I had for years for our production process, it was more like a spreadsheet, and put it into this system, and it's actually improved a lot of our workflows, and because I have so many people involved in editing and designing during that production process, and we do it all ourselves. Most glossies, they're outsourcing to a design team and somewhere else in the country. So it's those are probably the 3 mission critical for me. Slack is how we communicate too as a team. That's like a.
So you threw a 4th one in there. I like that. I like the still. I mean, I'm using this like, all right, this podcast production cycle, because literally it's me.
Yeah.
What is your favorite bubbly drink? I may have read that somewhere.
Oh yeah, I'm a big bubbly person. I don't discriminate. I love all bubbly as long as it's not sweet, but I would say kava is probably one of my go-tos. Champagne, I'm never going to turn down, but I love a French 75 or any kind of sparkling, cocktail. Yeah.
And lastly, what is a superpower you would want to try for 24 hours?
Whoa, that's tough. Actually, that came up in a family lunch over the last weekend. Let's see. I think maybe reading minds, just because I am always curious. I know I would regret that immediately. It's like, have you ever had the impulse to like when you were younger, like read your person you were dating's like texts, or like go through your childhood friends diary while they're using the bathroom on a sleepover when you're like 9. Just me. Okay, I did that. I thought I wanted to. I didn't do it, but I wanted to. But I mean, I think that's the journalist, right? Like I would love to be able to read minds for 24 hours. But then I think I would be in therapy for the rest of my life because of everything I learned. But I think that would be fascinating. So.
That's great. That's great. It's a good answer, actually. So with that, one, I want to thank you for coming on to the podcast, spending some time with me. And two, I want to invite and encourage you to share your website, social media, where folks can check out Fray and all the fine things you guys are doing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
So social media, website?
Oh, right, sorry. Of course, so DistrictFray.com, and then all of our handles for Insta, Twitter, and Facebook are District Fray as well. And then for DC Fray proper to play in our sports leagues or find out about our other events, it's all DC Fray. But yeah, please. And there's a list of the places you can pick up print copies around the city, or hit us up and we'll make sure you have one.
And there you have it, folks. Again, from Eaton Radio in Washington, D.C. at Eaton, D.C., I'm Rob Lee for Monica Alford, saying that there's art, community, culture, and journalism in and around your neck of the woods. You've just got to look for it.